everyone. Today we'll be exploring gender issues with overarching feminist themes of religion, beauty, playhood, and with touches of musical theatre and also disability, primarily in women. And we'll be comparing it with regional dynamics of India and West, specifically in England. So for this podcast, we have Isabel and Emma with us from Liverpool Hope University. So, Emma, I would like to ask you, you work in primary education and that's your main interest, right?
Yes.
So tell us more that why you got invested in primary education.
So I'm in my second year in university, so I've only got this year left and then next year. And it's just always like a career that I've always wanted to do. I feel like I can work really well with children, and I also just want to work as well within education, ensuring that everyone gets a fair education and that's done to the best advantage essentially.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're Catholic, right? And it was compulsory to fifth level, to fifth class, to have religion incorporated in your education system. How do you feel about that?
So the primary school I went to was a Catholic-based primary school, and then so was my secondary. So in secondary school, you have to do 5 years, and then you have an optional 2 years to do after that. But for the first 5 years, like there's no option to do religion. You have to do it as a subject for your GCSEs. And then I chose as well optionally on top of that to do it for my A levels the extra 2 years. So I decided to do that because religion is something in my family that is very much like incorporated in a sense, with like celebrations and things like that. So I thought that I would do it for A level just to get a more deeper understanding of it, and as well as like it would be useful in a sense for teaching as well, because as I go on in my career I prefer to teach in Catholic schools, so having it for an A level would be very much like an advantage.
Yeah, I feel, but in terms of seeing religion and feminism, I think in largely Indian context we have these, these cinematic female iconographies like of Durga and Kali, right? And they're seen as very, very energized and full of rage, full of power, and someone who is, cutting off these demons and fighting against them, and largely a patriarchal system.
Yeah.
So, do you have such female iconographies in your religion?
Yes, so we have Virgin Mary. She would be very much like an icon in the Catholic Church because she obviously was Jesus' mother, and she did a lot for women and a lot just for the church in general. And then we would have there's a lot of saints, so like Saint Bridget, and then there's also like Mother Teresa, and do a lot of work with charities and things like that for children in disadvantaged areas. So there's lots of women and like nuns and things like that who have helped women like throughout the years.
So you also mentioned your interest in feminism and beauty standards.
Yeah.
So what do you think of beauty standards that are largely different from India and then back home in England?
Yeah. So since I visited India, like the first thing I noticed was all the bright colors and like all the amazing outfits that everyone's wearing. And compared to home, like in England, I would say that like at home it's very much like the land and like basic outfits, like there's just not much going on. Even with like jewelry, like your necklace is gorgeous, like it's so detailed and everything. Whereas home it's very much, I wouldn't say things will have much as detail to them. Like there's just a lot more like excitement to the eye whenever you look at like Indian culture within like fashion and things like that. Whereas home it changes a lot with trends and things, but it's very much bland, I would say. Like not to insult our fashion or anything, but there's not much going on.
So I get that because in India we have such a rich culture, right? So I feel people, I mean, since you're very young, we're on with jewelries and like these rich embroidered clothes and everything.
Yeah.
I think that has permeated to some level in England, I feel. But what do you think about fast fashion and trends?
I think with like the influence of social media, things can change a lot. Say for example, a specific celebrity has wore a different outfit with a different pattern, a lot of people will jump on that, wear it for a couple of weeks, and then it's just completely disregarded. Like sometimes people wouldn't even like recycle the clothing, they just would throw it out. Like it's not given to charity shops, it's not sold second-handly, and then that is obviously creating a lot of waste, and like obviously it's not recycled properly or anything. So I think that is a big issue in the UK, but a lot of people have started to like catch on in a sense to it and are trying to make changes to that
Mm.
and be more resourceful on things. Whereas compared to India, like I would say all the things is like reused in a sense. It's not really like it's worn for a long time because it's not fast fashion. It's like all the same kind of. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I do
Yeah.
understand that because I mean I see fast fashion here in India as well, and Delhi being a metropolitan city.
Yeah.
But back home, so I'm from Kanpur, and there are fast fashion trends. But then the question is that there's also class divide, right? So fast fashion trends, they don't permeate through that class division.
Yeah.
There's a certain section of people like upper middle class or upper class people, like elitist sort of people who follow these fast fashion trends in India. But largely, I think in India, with fashion, it has more to do with meaning, right? So there's a tradition. So like when my mother got married, she wore the same outfit that my grandmother wore for her wedding. So passing on of the jewelry, passing on of clothes, that's seen as a very rich culture tradition. It's not just mere piece of cloth; it's a piece of memory.
Yeah.
It's a legacy that is carried forward. So I think people attach themselves and root themselves within this culture of clothing.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that's so much nicer.
So also you want to speak about rural women, right? So what do you think about that?
With regards to like women in rural areas and things, I think with feminism, it's harder very much for like career driven and things like that. That's why coming to India was really interesting for me to see like different people, like how they're able to like act as a feminist in a sense. With regards to like women in rural areas, like it's harder for them to have careers, because they have children to look after, so there's childcare costs, transportation, lack of education and things. So I like speaking about things like that, and like compared to the UK, there's maybe more charities and organisations things that help women to sort of have the opportunity to not sort of much like it's so I don't do you know, it's hard to speak
Yes,
about because I don't wanna
because also I feel mostly like the plight of rural women has also to do with caste here in India. Something that is not evident in England because caste here plays a major role of how you mobilize in the city, in India also, but usually in metropolitan areas. Certain sections are, not reachable, accessible to certain people belonging from a certain caste. So, and also rural women, so lack of opportunities, mostly women from Adivasi or Dalit communities are employed as wage earners, wage workers who have to travel for kilometers to just work and then return back home. So it's a caste-centric issue here. So we have a lot. So I think there's a lack of Dalit feminism and Adivasi feminism here in India, which also needs to be taken into account.
But even myself, like I don't mean in the sense of like to be a feminist you have to have a career or anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
so
yes.
That's like it's hard to speak about sometimes because obviously like women in these areas are feminists, but it's just hard for them to do things that other people have opportunities to do as women. So
Exactly, because I think it's a very liberal point of view to feel that feminism is about going out, breaking the glass ceiling, conquering the world. But no, feminism is being rooted in what you believe in. It's also supporting women who choose to, be housewives, housemakers. So that is, and you cannot be a feminist without being an intersectional feminist.
Exactly.
So since we discussed about intersectional feminism, I would now like to move on to you, Isabel, because you're studying musical theatre and you're also diagnosed with ADHD and autism. So I want you to talk about it more so we can explore this theme of disability and feminism, right? So
I think like coming from studying for musical theatre, especially being diagnosed with like autism, that's definitely been somewhere that for me personally I can just express myself in my own way. But I also focus on like accessibility. So for me personally it's a lot easier to find like places to have a safe space for safe people with like physical disabilities, or another it's a lot harder. So I think that's more like what I am more interested in, like finding that accessibility, because it's not as it is shown in the UK, but it's not as mainstream as it should be.
Yes.
Do you have anything like that in India?
I feel disability is a largely covered issue here in India, except for we do have reservation for people with disability, right? And mostly in government colleges. But that's largely it. And then you have like we put ramps in colleges, but then there are also places which are inaccessible to them, right? People with physical disabilities, and then mental disabilities. That's a whole another genre. And I feel when we talk about people with ADHD, autism, or mental disabilities, there's lack of medical research. Don't you feel that?
Definitely. I feel like with diagnosis, the path of diagnosis, for ADHD and autism, it's so much harder for a woman to get diagnosed as the criteria is focusing on like men and how they react with autism and ADHD, and how, especially with ADHD, how a man or a child, a boy can react with when they have ADHD is so much different from a female. So for a lot of places, it's so much harder for them to get the help that they need, and to get the accessibility they need, and get like the accommodations that they need for things like that. So
Yeah, because I mean, largely these medical institutions or like research centers are, dominated by men, funded by men, and then so they have the command over how much do they fund in these researches which are women-centric or around issues of gender, right? Because then there are even queer people who have disabilities, and then that's another different section because there's a lot more mental illness within queer and trans people, which is not uncovered, talked about at all, and with the help agency that they need is cut out from the system, especially in India, where I've seen that queer people do not, have resources or even just the communication line, which is totally absent. Right? Also, so you talk about female playwrights in theatres.
Yeah.
Could you maybe elaborate on that?
So in my personal opinion, a female playwright can write a woman in more of a, can write her in like properly. So for example, A Doll's House by Hedrick Irwin, how he wrote the character of Nora compared to how Nina Raine wrote the character of, how she wrote the character of Kitty in Consent. They are completely different but have similar issues. I won't go into that too much, but they have very similar marital issues, but they are written completely different. You can very clearly see how this written on woman versus written by a man. And it's the same on the male spectrum, so you can definitely tell a difference when a man is written by a woman versus when a man is written by a man. There's a clear difference, and it's definitely up to opinion, but in my personal opinion, a female playwright can write a character properly, whereas a lot of male playwrights are a lot more biased.
I see that because I think largely there's been this digital debate ongoing in Indian cinema. So there's this trend like men written by women, and then men written by men. So when women, screenwriters or directors write men, when they portray male characters, they're softer. They're more like they're very feministic in their approach. There's this movie Piku. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. So the character of Irfan is. So if you see him, he is a man written by a woman, right? And then you see movies like Kabir Singh or Animal, and then there's like men written by men who are like angry, violent, and misogynistic, and hurting women physically, and that influences a very large crowd, especially uneducated crowd in India. You have these people who are not aware about that dichotomy that goes on between gender, violence, and cinema, and then they just inflict that. So also, do you feel that theatre is a political space?
Definitely. I feel like it can be a very, very political space for, I'd say a certain age. So in the UK we have something called pantomime, which a lot of like children and schools will go to. I've been to them every Christmas since I was a child. But that's more just like a theatre company putting on a fairy tale
Oh,
with like
that's exclusively for children.
it's not exclusively for children, but it's more performed for children. So it's pretty much like a fairy tale, like some song kind of thing, but compared to musicals, for example, like Limbs, that is all about the French Revolution, and it is more a love story, but it does focus on some of the political side, as that you mentioned before about the French Revolution. But it is an incredibly political industry, but it's not shown as political as what it should be.
So as you were saying before, the French Revolution, it is very, very political, but it's not shown as political as it should be. Because I think for a lot of musicals as well, so for example, Hairspray, that focuses on like integration, segregation. That is incredibly political, but how it's shown, I feel like in a way it's meant to educate certain people. Because I watched that when I was like 11 years old. I had no idea what any of that was. But now that I'm older, I'm watching it now, I'm like, okay, this was used to educate me when I was like a child. And it's such a nice way of doing it, so I think it should be used in more political contexts, so yeah.
Yeah, I think theatre can serve as a very powerful political tool, even in India. So we have these. I'm not sure if you've heard about Nukkad Natak. So it's like a street play, street performance that people, students largely do, and in university spaces. So, so my college has a Nukkad Natak group, and so what they do is they perform on streets, like a flash mob. So they gather out of there and then they just start performing. So it's a play, and the aim of Nukkad Natak is to mobilize people and then to perform on social issues, so to reflect the current times that are the current problems, the issues that are ongoing in society. And this has largely been also used in various resistance movements.
Sorry, it's just came to my mind. So something that fascinates me about the way that I don't think it should is that a lot of I read a book recently about women in theatre, and for a lot of theatre historians, they say that women haven't been in theatre since like the first time they were in theatre was probably like the 20th century, I believe. But in actual fact, women have been in theatre since well before, but they haven't been in mainstream theatre, mainstream like West End Broadway or anything like that, but they've just been doing it in makeshift theatre spaces or like busking and stuff like that. So I feel like that's something that isn't as known as it should be, because I remember when I was doing my GCSEs, I was always told that women were never in theatre, it was men who were playing women, and I actually thought that was quite true. Another thing I want to mention, because it's about accessibility, it's not just making theatre that's accessible, it's viewing theatre. So for example, in Liverpool, well, Liverpool Theatre, the Liverpool Empire is the biggest two-tier theatre in the UK.
Wow.
And it has over 8,000 seats, and around 60-ish of them are physically accessible.
Oh, that's disappointing.
It's so disappointing. Yeah, I think it is around 60-ish of them that are physically accessible, but also in the Liverpool Empire, for say people with autism, you have to search. So I tried to find somewhere like a play that did a relaxed performance, but in the UK that's something that has no strobe lights, no flashing lights, no loud noises, and the main lights will stay on. So it is more focused for people with ADHD or people who struggle with like sensory issues. I searched about 10 minutes to try and find where it was, or try and find which pieces did it, and I think that is incredibly disappointing, because it should just be there when you want to buy your ticket. Where it is for science performances and subtitle performances, but for relaxed performances, it's really hard to find.
Also, I mean, theatre as a place for women, like you did mention that, the history part of it a bit. And then I feel that in earlier times, theatre was just a place for women to be free, to be liberated, to be able to step out of their home and be like, okay, so now I do have some authority, some power to, paths that where I'm going, what I'm watching, and just sitting there watching a play out of their homes, because there's also this certain patriarchal domination that goes in, especially here in India, that where you're going, what you're doing, what you're wearing, right? So just to be able to be free of that thing, and so I think theatre was a very liberating space for them. But then, yes, the issue of accessibility and disability mainly that still persists in theatre. I think yes, and India again. I mean, I'm not a very, I'm not into theatres a lot, but I do feel that when it comes to disability and feminism, there has to be a lot more progress that needs to be made. So we've just scratched the surface, barely scratched the surface. Yeah.
Just going off what you said about like how data is a place where one can escape, I think now it's gotten so much harder for women too, because data is such a female dominated area, so women are having to fight and like well, not so much fight, but they're having to I don't know how to explain it, but it's so much harder for them to get a role in there. For example, for men it's so much easier. So I personally don't think that's very fair. Or it's also going with like the pay as well. I know some people personally who have been paid so much as what men have while working in a theatre or while performing in a theatre. It's awful.
Yeah. Also, I can see that you have mehendi on your hands. How do you feel about that? Do you like henna?
I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah. What do you think, Emma?
I love it. I think it is so gorgeous. Like I wanted to get it like early so that if it fades, I can get it topped up for going back.
Yeah.
I just think it is so beautiful. And, like the skills that like all these like I got women to do mine because there was no males as well doing it. But I was like, don't want. I want a woman to do mine. To support her business and everything. But it's just so detailed, and she just did it so naturally, so fast. Like it's such an amazing skill. Like it is absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
I think the aesthetics of henna are largely appealing to you guys a lot, because in India, what I've seen with my friends and everyone, people do not prefer mehendi a lot, because they're like, oh, it's too Indian maybe, it's too much, it smells a lot.
So do you not like it?
I love it. So every Diwali,
Yeah.
I get henna with my sister.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, we do. And also it's like a tradition in our weddings and everything, and
Yes.
festivities.
Yeah.
So we do get mehendi, especially the bride, and then the groom as well.
Oh,
Yeah. So yeah, in India, like bride and groom, yeah, both of them get. It's not restricted by gender. Although lately it has become more restricted by gender. Yeah, because then it's like the aesthetics of henna are too feminine for men.
Yeah.
So it's like that it kind of harms them, harms their ego.
Yeah, that's the same I suppose at home with makeup. Like men wouldn't really wear makeup much
Yeah.
because it's seen as like very feminine and they don't want it to like maybe affect their masculinity, I suppose.
And getting your nails done as well.
Yeah, getting their nails done. I feel like more recently men have started maybe getting their nails done. Not as much as what they probably would want to, because they're scared of like affecting their masculinity maybe. But like with social media and stuff, a lot of influencers, male influencers, would get their nails done maybe just a plain black colour or something. And I can see that influence a few people, but yeah.
Yes, I think it's been wonderful talking to you and getting like such a global perspective on things, because I feel there's still a lot more progress that we need to make in England and in India respectively. Also, the regional dynamics that is there needs to be explored a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been so lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.